At 7:42 a.m. on a quiet Tuesday morning, a single tweet from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez detonated across social media. This girl is dangerous. Disinformation is not free speech. She needs to be silenced, and fast. The quote wasn't subtle. The photo attached was a freeze frame of Karoline Leavitt mid-speech at a campus town hall, hand raised, lips parted, eyes fierce. Beneath it, the caption read, "This isn't patriotism, it's manipulation." Within minutes, Silence Karoline was trending on X. Within the hour, progressive influencers reposted it. Liberal journalists dissected it, and panelists on The View grinned knowingly as they read it aloud like gospel. But what no one expected, what even AOC hadn't calculated, was how Karoline would respond. Not with a tweet, not with a thread, but with a mic, a camera, and every single word read aloud. That part, however, was still hours away, at 8:07 a.m. Karoline was in a car, scrolling through her phone. She didn't flinch when she saw AOC's tweet. She didn't even raise an eyebrow. Her aide, Sarah, was already panicking. She tagged CNN, MSNBC, The Washington Post. "She wants you blacklisted." Karoline stared out the window, her voice level. "She doesn't want me blacklisted," she said. "She wants me erased." Then she turned to Sarah. "What time is the campus panel today?" 3 o'clock. Live on C-SPAN. Streaming on X and YouTube. Karoline nodded. "Good. Get me the full thread. Every single tweet. I'm going to read it all on air, with names. You want to respond to her on stage?" Sarah asked. Karoline looked at her, calm as ever. "No. I want to hold up a mirror and let the whole country see who's afraid of words." By 10:30 a.m., screenshots of AOC's tweet had crossed the aisle. Conservative commentators were already lighting fires in return. Sitting congresswoman just said a political opponent should be silenced. That's not democracy. That's tyranny in heels. Karoline didn't retweet anything. She didn't post. She prepared, while AOC added more fuel with follow-up tweets branding Karoline's speeches as code for extremism and veiled authoritarianism. Karoline printed them out, highlighted them, and placed them neatly into a leather folder. And at 2:15 p.m., when she arrived at the Georgetown Auditorium for the nationally televised panel, she stepped out of the car with the thread in one hand and the Constitution in the other. The auditorium was packed wall-to-wall students, faculty, media, influencers, all crammed into rows. Some were wide-eyed with anticipation. Others smirked behind their phones. Cameras were already rolling, fingers hovering over record. The backdrop read, "Gen Z and the Future of Free Speech." A neutral title. But the room was anything but. Karoline Leavitt stood backstage, blazer sharp, cross necklace glinting faintly beneath her collar, the leather folder in her hands. It wasn't heavy, but it might as well have been made of steel. Her aide leaned in. "Campus moderators just got a revised script. AOC's tweet is in the intro." Karoline didn't blink. "Of course it is." The panel moderator, slick-haired media professor with glasses. He didn't need Stroh to center stage with practiced confidence. He took the mic with a smirk. "Welcome, everyone, to what promises to be a lively conversation about the limits and liberties of speech in the digital age. Today, we're joined by journalists, activists, and figures of controversy." Laughter followed. And unless you've been living under a rock, you know why today's discussion is trending before it even begins. He paused. The big screen behind him lit up. This girl is dangerous. Disinformation is not free speech. She needs to be silenced, and fast. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. The crowd erupted. Some cheered wildly. Others booed. Phones rose like weapons. The moderator smirked again. And now, the subject of that tweet, Karoline Leavitt. Polite applause scattered awkwardly across the room. A few students clapped louder, but more were filming than welcoming. Near the front, Someone held a handmade sign. Silence isn't censorship, it's protection. Karoline stepped onto the stage, not quickly, not slowly, just with purpose. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. She walked to her chair, placed the leather folder on the table, and calmly removed a single sheet. Then, with deliberate motion, she looked up at the moderator. "If you're going to start with the quote," she said into the mic, her voice clear, "you'd better be prepared for the rest." Gasps, then silence. The panelists beside her, a journalist from The Atlantic and a student union activist, exchanged uneasy glances. Karoline opened the folder, and the room felt it. She wasn't there to defend herself. She was there to indict the entire narrative. She sat tall, hands steady, eyes scanning the auditorium. The screen behind her still displayed the infamous tweet. Phones stayed raised. Smirks from the left. Nervous whispers from the right. She leaned toward the microphone, not theatrically, but with purpose. "This morning," she said, her voice smooth and measured, "a sitting member of Congress said I should be silenced." Gasps. She didn't just disagree with me. She didn't just criticize me. She said I was dangerous and needed to be shut down. She held up the printed tweet. "You've already seen this one," she said, tapping the page. "This girl is dangerous. Disinformation is not free speech. She needs to be silenced." Karoline paused, then smiled a nod for charm, or to mark her opening shot. "Well, Congresswoman, I hope you're she," began to read. Watching, she turned the page. "Because here's what you said next." She read aloud. "Karoline Leavitt represents everything wrong with youth politics. Ignorance masked as conviction." The room stirred. Some students cheered. Others sat stiffly. To Karoline kept reading. "She uses free speech as a shield for hate. If she truly cared about America, she'd stop speaking and start learning." She looked up, her expression unchanged. "Is that what free speech means now?" she asked the crowd. "Only for those who agree with you." Silence. She turned another page. "I've asked networks to stop inviting her platforms, to stop boosting her clips. What she says isn't dialogue. It's disinformation, dressed in lipstick." Even the moderator shifted in his seat. Karoline slowly laid the page flat on the table. "Lipstick," she repeated quietly. "That's your critique, my lip gloss." The crowd, TENSED. Jai leaned forward slightly, locking eyes with a row of progressive student leaders in the front. "I've read every word. I didn't come here to shout. I came here to show you that truth doesn't need to hide behind hashtags and retweets." One final page remained. She held it up. "And this one is the quiet part," said loud. She read, "She's a puppet for Trump, dressed up for Gen Z. Dangerous because she's convincing. We silence her or she spreads." The room froze. No applause. No laughter. Just silence. Karoline placed the final page down, folded her hands, and looked directly at the moderator. "I've been called a lot of things," she said calmly, "but I've never been called that honest." Her words hung in the air like a verdict. "We silence her or she spreads," echoed in the minds of every student, every moderator, every quiet journalist in the back row. The moderator shifted again, adjusting his notes. The other panelists looked visibly uncomfortable. They had come for a debate, but Karoline had turned it into something else, entirely not defense, not retaliation, but a reckoning. She took a breath and leaned forward again. "There's something terrifying about someone who doesn't flinch when you try to shame her," she said, scanning the audience. And that's exactly what that tweet tried to do. A few students in the back stood and began to clap. The rest remained seated, frozen, calculating. Karoline raised her hand gently to quiet the applause. "I don't need cheering," she said. "I need honesty from all of you." She lifted a small, pocket-sized copy of the Constitution from her folder and held it up. "I swore to uphold this," she said, "not as a lawyer, not as a politician, but as a citizen." She opened it, turning to a marked section. First Amendment, she read. Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. Okay. She looked up, calm but firm. That includes voices you don't like. That includes opinions you disagree with. That includes inconvenient truths. A murmur ran through the room. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is a sitting member of Congress, Karoline continued. She has every right to disagree with me. She has every right to debate me. But when she uses her platform to call for my silencing, that's not democracy. That's authoritarianism with better branding. A ripple of nervous but real laughter passed through the room. The moderator tried to cut in. Miss Leavitt, we'd like to pivot. Karoline didn't look at him. I'm not done. The crowd stirred again. Some clapped. Others whispered. The tension shifted not into chaos, but into something rarer. Clarity. She stood up. I'm 27 years old. I've been called a puppet, a parrot, a threat, a mistake. But I've never been called irrelevant, and that's why they're afraid. She looked directly into the nearest live stream camera. To every young woman watching, don't let them silence you with hashtags. Don't let them reduce you to outfits and buzzwords. They want you quiet because your voice terrifies them. A beat, and that's how you know it matters. For a moment, the room was still. Then the shouting began. A group of students in the upper left section stood suddenly, waving signs. Hate speech is not free speech. Protect marginalized voices. Speech has consequences. The shouting began. A young man in a progressive uprising hoodie shouted from the aisle. You don't get to hide behind the Constitution to spread bigotry. The crowd stirred. Some clapped in support. Others booed the interruption. Karoline didn't flinch. She calmly set down her Constitution, looked directly at the protester, and spoke into the mic. I'm not hiding behind anything. I'm standing in front of everything they want to tear down. More murmurs followed. The moderator stood to regain order, but Karoline beat him to it. To those of you who disagree with me, she said, turning toward the student protesters, I respect your right to speak. I didn't ask anyone to silence you, and I never will. The line landed. Some of the protesters paused. Here's what I won't respect, she continued, her voice calm and steady. When one side of the argument decides the other side isn't allowed to exist. A girl in the front row, arms folded and eyes skeptical, stood up. Then, what about hate speech? She demanded. What about when people like you use freedom to harm others? Karoline nodded slowly, acknowledging the question. Hate speech exists, she said plainly. But who gets to define it? The person in power, the trending hashtag, or the loudest voice in the room? Silence. I've never used my platform to threaten anyone, she added, but I've used it to question everything, and that's what makes them nervous. One of the panelists, a professor from New York, leaned into his mic and muttered, You sure seem rehearsed. Karoline turned to him, eyebrows raised. I'm not rehearsed, she said. I'm prepared. There's a difference. Scattered applause broke out. Karoline took a breath and looked around the auditorium, locking eyes with the students who had shouted her down moments earlier. You don't have to like me. You don't have to agree with me, she said. But if you want to shut me up instead of out-argue me, maybe you're the one who isn't ready. This time, even some of the protesters sat down, not in agreement, but in acknowledgement, and that was all Karoline needed. She hadn't won them over. She'd made them stay. The moment Karoline stepped off the stage, her phone vibrated non-stop. 23 missed calls, 54 unread messages, but none of that mattered compared to the first push notification on her screen. The thread is now trending #1 nationwide. Sarah rushed up behind her. You broke them. CNN split. MSNBC is calling it a meltdown. And Fox already has a lower third. Karoline versus the squad. Karoline didn't react. She placed the folder back in her bag, adjusted her cross necklace, and calmly asked, "Did AOC respond yet?" Sarah paused, eyes wide. "She's typing." Seconds later, a new tweet appeared on Karoline's lock screen. "When you need to read someone's tweets out loud on stage for clout. Maybe your own words aren't strong enough, but I'm glad you finally read something." Backstage erupted in conflicting reactions. Some groaned. Others laughed nervously. Karoline scrolled once, twice, then locked her phone. "Good," she said. "She's scared." At that exact moment, newsrooms lit up. MSNBC. Karoline Leavitt brave or brazen? Campus speech sparks national debate. Fox News. Karoline exposes AOC's hypocrisy and does it without raising her voice. The View. It was performative. AOC's tweets weren't even meant for her. On X, one user posted, "AOC told us to silence her." Karoline read the whole indictment back with footnotes. Another wrote, "I don't like Karoline, but she didn't flinch. That's what shook me." Within 30 minutes. The clip of Karoline calmly reading AOC's tweet thread hit 2.8 million views. Edited versions flooded YouTube. Reaction videos piled up. The moment she read, "We silence her," or "she spreads," came the centerpiece of every discussion. Late night shows made jokes. Podcasts exploded with takes. Young women stitched to speech on TikTok, pointing to Karoline's steadiness. But the battle wasn't over. That evening, AOC tweeted again, "I don't debate with puppets. I debate policy. If she wants a real fight, she can face me live. No stage tricks." The bait was obvious. Sarah looked at Karoline. "She wants you in the ring for real this time." Karoline didn't blink. "She doesn't know I came prepared for round two." The moment that first tweet was posted, she had pulled out a second folder. "I have her deleted tweets," she said, "her archived threads." And she pulled out a second folder flip-flops from the last 3 years. Sarah's eyes widened. "You're really going to read those too?" Karoline smiled faintly. "Not read them." She looked straight ahead. "I'm going to televise them." The CNN invitation arrived at 8:46 a.m. the next morning. It wasn't casual. It wasn't polite. It was war paint, dressed as primetime diplomacy, America at the crossroads. Free speech, power, and a new political divide. 2 guests. 1 stage. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Karoline Leavitt. Karoline, read the email once, then again. "They think they're hosting a conversation," she said, handing the phone to Sarah. "But I'm walking in with the closing argument." The prep wasn't just intense, it was surgical. Karoline pulled clips from past interviews where AOC flip-flopped on campus speech, scolded Elon Musk for censorship, then praised the same tech policies that banned conservative voices. She gathered screenshots, links, archived tweets, even a 2019 podcast where AOC said, "I'll never advocate for censorship, even when it's hard to hear what people say." Karoline circled it and read, "This is my Exhibit A." By 6:55 p.m., she stood outside CNN's Manhattan studio, white blazer sharp, folder in one hand, Constitution in the other. Inside, Anderson Cooper was already live. "We're about to witness one of the most anticipated conversations of the year," he said. "A progressive icon and a conservative lightning rod. Both young, both fierce, but only one can control the narrative tonight." The room darkened. The intro music faded. The lights hit. Cameras rolled. "Welcome to America at the Crossroads," Cooper began. "Tonight, we're joined by Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and former White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt." Applause thundered, but it wasn't unified. Karoline didn't flinch. AOC smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Cooper turned to AOC first. "Congresswoman, you said Karoline should be silenced. Do you stand by that?" AOC, ever polished, chuckled. "I said dangerous rhetoric needs to be challenged. And if that makes people uncomfortable, maybe it should." Karoline waited. No interruption. No reaction. Cooper turned to her. Miss Leavitt, your response. Karoline opened her folder. I brought the receipts. She placed the printed tweet on the table. Anderson, she didn't challenge me. She campaigned to erase me. She slid the 2019 podcast quote toward him. She doesn't believe in censorship only when it benefits her side. AOC narrowed her eyes. That quote's out of context. Karoline smiled. I have the full audio. Want me to play it? The room? TENSED. Cooper blinked. Are you saying? Karoline nodded. I'm not here to argue. I'm here to read the record, line by line. Her fingers hovered briefly over her phone, then tapped play. From the small speaker, AOC's voice filled the studio crisp. Unmistakable. I'll never advocate for censorship. Even if I hate what they say, I'll defend their right to say it. The clip was dated, labeled, sourced. Silence blanketed the studio. Anderson Cooper blinked, thrown off script. AOC cleared her throat and tried to laugh it off. Context matters. That was 4 years ago. Karoline leaned in, her voice low but sharp. And yet, just 24 hours ago, you tweeted that I should be silenced. Not debated. Not challenged. Silenced. She pulled out another sheet. This one's from 2021. You've praised Twitter for removing accounts that threatened democracy. But last month, you criticized Elon Musk for letting those same accounts back. AOC cut in, her voice tightening. Those accounts spread violence. Karoline calmly overrode her. They shared articles, just like I do. The room stirred. Cooper tried to interject. Let's stick to the issue of public platforms. Karoline raised a finger nod to silence, but to signal there was more. She tapped her phone again. A second clip played. AOC on a 2022 podcast, praising a controversial university speaker ban. If certain voices trigger violence or hate, we don't owe them a microphone. Karoline looked directly at her. And I guess I'm one of those voices now. AOC was losing her rhythm. Her posture tightened. She shifted in her seat. You manipulate what I say, she snapped. You cherry pick. Karoline lifted her folder and calmly fanned it open. I brought the whole tree. The audience murmured louder. Clips from the exchange were already being cut, posted, retweeted. A hashtag began trending in real time. Hashtag Karoline has receipts. Anderson Cooper looked stunned. You're saying Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez is intentionally inconsistent? Karoline didn't hesitate. I'm saying she doesn't believe in silencing all speech, just speech she can't control. AOC scoffed. You're twisting the truth. Karoline turned to her, eyes locked. No, Congresswoman. You're twisting the truth. AOC snapped. No. Karoline replied, steady and clear. I'm quoting you out loud and edited, on the record. Exactly what you tried to prevent. The lights overhead buzzed faintly. You could feel it. The power was shifting. The narrative, once tightly held in curated threads and applause lines, was slipping. And Karoline wasn't raising her voice. She was just pressing play. AOC leaned forward, frustration brimming now, her mask of calm cracking. You think reading tweets and playing sound bites makes you some kind of truth teller? She snapped. You're just a megaphone for the right wing. You don't stand for freedom. You stand for chaos, for division. Karoline didn't blink. I stand for something you've forgotten, AOC smirked. And what's that? Karoline paused, just long enough, then spoke clearly into the mic. The right to speak even when it makes people like you uncomfortable. Gasps rippled through the studio. You could feel the moment shift, that heavy pause when the audience doesn't know whether to applaud or hold its breath. Karoline leaned back.com. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't clap back. She let the weight of truth do what noise couldn't. AOC laughed, but it sounded hollow. You're a fraud, Karoline. You don't believe in unity. You came here to perform. Karoline didn't even look at her. She turned to Anderson Cooper. You asked if this was a debate, she said. It's not. She faced the camera. This was a mirror. And I held it up, not just to her, but to everyone watching who still thinks censorship is strength and silence is virtue. Anderson, usually composed, looked unsure how to pivot. I think we need a break, but the audience had already decided. Applause erupted not from everyone, but from enough. From those who had come skeptical. From those who hadn't expected her to hold the room with evidence instead of emotion. From those who had followed hashtags and just watched the thread unravel for what it really was. Not a call to protect democracy, but to control it. The live comment stream on CNN's digital broadcast surged. She destroyed her without yelling once. This isn't just politics. This is principle. Karoline just gave a masterclass. AOC sat stiffly, arms crossed, jaw tight. Karoline gathered her notes slowly, deliberately, her white blazer catching the light. As the screen faded to commercial, Anderson's voice was faintly caught by a hot mic. That wasn't a debate. That was a dismantling. The second CNN cut to commercial. The internet exploded. Karoline read it. Unedited truth, thread by thread. All trending, all climbing by the second, within minutes. Fox News posted a highlight reel titled, Karoline versus AOC. The night the thread broke, a 12-second TikTok clip, just Karoline saying, the right to speak, even when it makes people like you uncomfortable, hit 5 million views before midnight. On X, conservative accounts declared, she walked in with tweets. She walked out with a movement. But it wasn't just a right. A Columbia student posted, I don't agree with her politics, but she didn't land. That's rare. A centrist commentator wrote, this wasn't a takedown. It was a revelation. AOC had sound bites. Karoline had facts. Meanwhile, AOC's account stayed silent for hours. No victory tweet. No rebuttal thread. Just silence. And in that silence, Karoline's presence grew louder. She walked out of the CNN studio into a swarm of cameras. Reporters shouted questions, but she didn't grandstand. She held the Constitution in one hand and the crumpled tweet printouts in the other. My job isn't to yell louder, she said. It's to make sure truth echoes longer. Trump reposted the clip minutes later. She's a star. The squad is crumbling, and the new generation is rising proud. Breitbart ran. Karoline didn't blink. AOC did. The Atlantic offered a measured take. Leavitt's calm could change the conservative playbook. MSNBC aired a panel arguing Karoline's rhetoric was dangerous but veiled behind polish. Even some guests hesitated to criticize her directly. In the days that followed, campus groups invited her to speak. Young conservatives turned her words into merch. Even independents began quoting her final line. This wasn't a debate. It was a mirror. AOC returned to social media 3 days later. No thread, no fight. Just one vague post. Politics shouldn't be a performance. We need substance. But it was too late. Karoline didn't need to perform. She just needed a microphone and the truth their threads were trying to bury. And when she read it out loud, America listened. In an age where tweets are weapons and silence is strategy, Karoline Leavitt chose neither. She chose the microphone. And she didn't just defend herself. She exposed the entire game one page at a time. One lie at a time. When the dust settled, it wasn't just a thread that unraveled. It was the illusion that anyone could silence her. Not now, not ever.